When is comedy more than just comedy?
That's a good question, actually. And I think, especially good conversation to have after some of the comments I've seen on that Hassan video I made.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know, man. It does seem like comedians, at least certain ones, kind of blend and kind of it's like a gray area. So I mean, you lead the conversation here? What are your thoughts?
So generally speaking, I want to make this very clear. I believe that comedians should be exempt from the fuck around and find out kind of mentality that people have. They want to quickly cancel you for doing this or saying
Right.
that.
I agree.
I want to make that very, very clear right here at the outset that I generally believe that comedians should be exempt across the board, regardless of your socio-political leanings.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the comments, because I've been the one responding to the comments, which I'm pretty sure is confusing to some of the people who watched that video because I'm given a different perspective. Yes, I'm kind of backing you up because I actually agree with you
Right.
in a really key way.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like kind of like, I'm like, yeah, so as a black guy, I'm just like, wait a minute. The guy that made the video ain't black. What the fuck is going on here, right? Especially for people who are just coming by the channel for the first time. But, I watched the video and I saw no problems with anything that you had to say whatsoever because I think that when you look at things, liberals tend to believe that when other liberals say stuff that there's always a justification and it's okay.
Right.
So, but if you say something that might be construed as something that might be making fun of or critical of a protected group, regardless of whether that criticism is valid or not, they think it should be out of bounds. So, we're
Yeah.
going to use Dave Chappelle's example here.
Mm-hmm.
Dave Chappelle says a lot of true things about some of the protected groups in this country because he's more of a social commentator these days more than he is just a guy trying to get people to laugh.
True.
Now, when he goes out there and says actual true things, they want him canceled.
Right.
So if we are going to live by this standard of comedians should have a responsibility for the words that they say, we cannot give Mr. Hassan a pass because if we're not going to give Dave Chappelle a pass for saying shit that's actually true, right?
Yeah.
Saying shit that's actually true,
Yeah. I think.
then
Yeah.
we cannot give Hassan a pass for trying to pass off a story as true
Mm-hmm.
when it isn't for one very particular reason.
Mm-hmm.
Because the kind of speech that he is using inflames racial and religious tensions.
Absolutely.
So I look at it as a spiritual, is spiritually analogous to you cannot shout fire in a crowded movie theater.
Yeah.
You should only be able to shout fire if there's an actual fire in the movie theater because of the effect it would have on the theater goers.
So this is my take on Hassan, and some people understood it, some didn't. Right? I'm not against him talking about racial issues in the country, or things that he's faced in his past, or even stories that haven't directly happened to him, or exaggerating stories. Right? No one's an idiot, right, in saying that like, oh, comedians, it's a documentary, it's got to be 100% truth. Like you can't exaggerate. Of course, comedians exaggerate. They do that to make the shit funny. Just calling it what it is. But when you make up fake stories about him facing racial oppression and they just all completely turn out to be fake, I don't really think that's comedy anymore. That's just you trying to, like you said, stoke the flames of racial tension, trying to kind of take advantage of the current situation that we're facing ourselves, the United States of America. As you put it beautifully in our conversation, there's enough real racial shit that goes wrong, racist shit that happens in this country that you could have stories and make comedy sketches about. There's real shit. There's real fucking problems that have happened in this country you could talk about. You don't need to fucking fake them, you know? And to me, it seems like just in my personal opinion, he does that because he's capitalizing on his own crowd. He's capitalizing on that demographic because it will get him clicks, it will get him views, and it will get him notoriety. I mean, he's in the running to be the next Daily Show host once Trevor Noah's gone, and that's my biggest issue with that type of stand-up. I'm fine with him exaggerating. I'm fine with him talking about fucked up stories. Like, if he had a story about some white 6-foot guy, like, rough, flat, like, hard fouling him, that would have been fucking far funnier than him making up about, like, an anthrax thing coming in the mail.
Right.
So, like, with the anthrax thing, or, like, that story where a hard foul he kind of equated to him, talking about an informant to the FBI about jihadists, right? And how a police officer roughed him up against the ground because he made a joke about airplanes and stuff like that and being into jihad. I just... There's so much better angles he could have taken to exaggerate a story to make it comedy. And I feel like with Hasan, maybe to be fair, maybe it's just what I've seen from the sketches. I feel like he's just using the division that we're currently facing in this country to gain popularity. That's just my personal take on it.
Right. It's almost like social looting.
Yep.
Right? Because what is looting? Taking advantage of an emergency situation to enrich oneself. When we were going through the Rona lockdowns, there was the whole thing about Jeff Bezos becoming so massively wealthy because the economy was effectively shut down. And a lot of people, especially on the economic left, and I tend to agree with them on this, it's looting. You're taking advantage of a really bad situation to become the richest man in the world for however long he was at the time.
Yeah.
And I would look at this very similarly. Like you're seeing that you can enrich yourself. In fact, there is a chick that we just talked about that faked getting hit in the face with a brick. She actually faked it.
That was fake?
She injected saline into her face to cause the swelling.
Wait, what happened with the GoFundMe money then? Because she got like...
Exactly the point. GoFundMe was investigating to see if there was any veracity. She's probably never going to see the $42,000 that ended up getting... I think the GoFundMe goal was $25,000 and got $42,000, right?
Oops.
So I look at that very much the same way. Yeah. You fabricated a story that was not true in whole or in part.
Absolutely.
And you're looking to... And then here's the thing that really, really messes with me on this. Mm-hmm. Actually, there's two things. Mm-hmm. When you use fake stories, you kill your own credibility.
True.
But here's the worst part of it. And I responded to one of the comments on the video. And this is really where my main concern is. There are a certain portion of our population who will bypass relevant, verifiable facts. And they will take anything, they will grasp onto anything to try to bring a narrative that is opposite of obviously verifiable facts. Right. So when you see that there is a contingent of our population, of our neighbors, mm-hmm. that is looking to say that racism does not exist, even with all of the myriads, you've got tons of evidence to the contrary.
Right.
When you bring the one false story, they're going to hold on to that one false story.
That's true. That's true.
And then say, well, how do we know that you're not lying? Because, look, that comedian got on stage and said that thing, and that was proven to be false. You didn't. Racism doesn't exist.
That's an amazing point to bring up, because when you start perpetuating all these fake stories, then everyone's like, well, did it really happen, or was that really, even with documented evidence? Because people... with all the information that we have at our fingertips, people don't want to like look up stuff to challenge themselves. They look up stuff to make sure, or I would say to support their standpoints, right? So when you
Confirmation bias.
confirmation bias, thank you, intelligent one here on the podcast. I think when it kind of comes down to getting your confirmation bias, if you have a few stories where they turn out to be fake, like, oh shit, see, it's all made up, it's all fake shit, like that never happened, and that's actually becomes, you're no longer helping the cause that you're trying to be about, you're hurting it.
Yeah.
You know? And
Yep.
that's the biggest problem I have with that stand-up. And I know maybe some people probably took, I'll be honest with you, I didn't even read the comments section. You're the one who's responding. But you're the one who's like told me about some of the comments. And hey, I'm not sitting here and saying that there isn't racist fucking shit that happens in this country, right? There isn't problems in this country, that there hasn't been police situations where they've completely overstepped. And you know, you can look up the older videos on my opinion on a lot of that shit. I don't think that's right. But with all that real available fucked up shit that does happen, again, why are we faking stories?
Right.
It doesn't help the cause at all.
Doesn't it hurts the cause. And so I want to be sure again. I want to make sure that people understand that I think that the comedian's freedom of speech
100%.
is sometimes, at least in spirit, in my personal opinion, their freedom of speech is more important than even my own freedom of speech. I feel like comedians need to be protected at all costs. In spirit. But in practice, I think it is really, really important to think about knowing the socioeconomic and socio-political environment that we currently inhabit is the material I'm about to bring to the stage. Is it going to kill or is it going to bomb? And if it is going to bomb, how is it going to bomb?
Yeah.
In this particular situation, it doesn't bomb in that it wasn't funny. It bombed in that the reaction from too many of the people that heard it was injurious to the social fabric of our society.
Yeah. I think when it kind of, and I'll just kind of reiterate one of the things, right? One of the stories that he kind of spread about the cop, he said he kind of joking about jihadists and getting like becoming like an airplane pilot, and they ended up getting stopped and like forced to the ground, right? And apparently that stemmed from a hard foul he took in basketball, right? He could have spun the story and exaggerated it to just make it about that, where he's like, oh, I was talking about, you know, being an airplane pilot and joking about jihadi, and then I played a white guy in basketball and he hard fouled me. He's like, not today, son. Like, you know, because there, you know, let's just call it what it is. After 9/11, there was a lot of fucked up shit that people did to people that were of the Islamic faith, right?
Or people that look like me.
Or yeah,
very brown.
People look like you, or had, you know, even people that wore a certain headwear.
Oh yeah.
Or something resembling it. Then certain people got afraid. I mean, it's kind of like how the perpetuation of black violence, of like a black teen in a hoodie, could be dangerous, right? We've had these conversations, these very difficult and thoughtful conversations on this channel. I'm not saying that didn't exist. I just don't think you need to exaggerate a situation. If he's going to, lie about a situation, exaggerate. Like that hard foul you took, I mean, I didn't give a fuck if you have a couple of, like, maybe exaggerations in there, but that would have been a funny fucking story.
Yeah.
But, you know, lying about anthrax and all that wild shit, it's like, it's really not needed. It's just not.
Right. I look at something that would be on that level of hyperbole. I think of Bill Burr, and I think of the things that he talks about and the stories that he has, you know, dealing with his wife, who is black. And you could tell that the stories are embellished. There's a certain validity. There's a certain detail that he gives in his stories that makes you believe that maybe these could have been real conversations, or maybe he embellished on them a little bit. Everybody understands what it's like to have these kinds of conversations with their spouses. So even if he is not, maybe even if he is taking artistic license,
Right.
it is not something that is going to cause people in large numbers to have a visceral negative reaction where the way that they would then go out and treat other people because of a story they heard would then be worse because of it, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you're this Hasan guy and you told a story that was not true, that made people more accepting of each other, then you're not doing harm to the social fabric. You're actually doing good. And it doesn't matter whether the story is true or not. So I think that some of the commenters on your video,
Yeah.
they were like, well, he's a comedian. Do you believe that comedians are telling all true stories? But the real issue at hand is not whether or not the story is true, but whether or not you are stoking the enmity and the strife between people with different religious beliefs and between people with different skin colors unnecessarily with your comments, with your material on the stage.
Yeah. I think, and it's kind of surprising that some people did take that completely out. Because I even said, like, exaggeration's fine. I think fabricating, obviously, comedians aren't telling the story. There's one comedian that has that Russian story. I thought Bert Kreischer, whatever the fuck his name is, right?
The one that likes to take off his
shirt a lot. Yeah. That guy, right? He has a whole story. It's a bunch of shit, but it doesn't cause division. It doesn't cause. It doesn't stoke racial bias. It doesn't stoke, like, I would say, problems. It's just a funny story.
Right.
And I think with Hasan, like, I'm not expecting my comedian to, speak 100% truth, but I think with certain issues and certain topics, I don't know, man. I don't think it's okay to play with. But hey, I mean, it's a free country. You want to do that? That's your right. I'm just saying, for me, it's not for me.
Right. Again, when you're talking about the freedom of speech, and again, I want to make it very clear the difference. People were not just critical of Dave Chappelle. They were calling for him to be canceled.
Yeah.
Professional comedians understand that you do not have a right to people cheering and clapping. When you get up on stage, they know that there's a reason why most people don't get up on stage and do stand-up, because they're not ready for the harsh reaction if their jokes don't hit.
Yeah.
But we're not calling for the silencing of Mr. Hasan.
No.
What we're saying is that he put some words out there and he deserves to be criticized, not necessarily because the story was untrue, but because he made an insinuation that he purported to be true that offends people's senses on racial and religious points.
Right.
And it turned out to not be true. I'll tell you a little story, Cap. This might blow your mind. Okay? Me and Mrs. Evil, we used to be involved with a woman that decided that she did not want to associate with me anymore because I criticized her for doing this one thing. She put up an artist depiction of Disney princesses as DV victims.
Wait, what?
She put on social media cartoon reimaginings of Disney princesses as visible, bruised up, bleeding DV victims.
Okay.
And that wasn't really the main issue for me. The main issue was she was using these drawn cartoons to demonize men, to say that we victimize women.
Oh my God.
Now, you could have made that point.
In the world of Disney.
You could have made that point by grabbing any story off the headlines where the guy was actually at fault. But you choose to try to poison people's opinions of men with an artist's interpretation of a Disney princess. You know that they're not real.
Yeah. I mean,
So you're trying to stoke this gender war with drawn cartoons, and you think that that's acceptable. That doesn't make any sense.
I mean, listen, like to be fair though, Beauty and the Beast, I think she was more in the wrong because that was bestiality. I mean, that's a whole different conversation. She wanted that yak from a fucking whatever the fuck that was. That's fucked up. That's bestiality right there. That's fucked. Right? So we're gonna talk about
This motherfucker Cap said rename the movie Beauty and the Bestiality.
I'm just saying, bro. I've never seen a chick get that wet for a fucking animal before.
Hey man, there's a lot of weird women out there with a lot of weird proclivities.
I mean,
okay,
God damn, but yeah, no,
stay off the internet, Cap. Stay off the internet.
I definitely should. But yeah, I think with and that's my biggest problem, right? There's genuine stories out there of abuse and other shit and fucked up parts of society you can talk about. You don't need to make up or go fictional world about how I don't know, the Little Mermaid was getting her ass or cheeks clapped viciously in a DV manner. I don't know. It's just weird. I don't really co-sign that type of behavior. I'm fine with a comedian making jokes about a fucked up situation because you know me through my life. That's how I've gotten through fucked situation. I make crack jokes about it. I'm fine with it, but I'm also don't feel like the need to be like, oh, well, you know, this one time when I was in a black neighborhood, like a bunch of black fists just jumped me and just trying to I don't know, stoke racial bias. It's stupid. I think it's stupid.
I'm glad that you brought that up, Cap. I'm glad you brought that up. Behind closed doors, some of it you get to see if you subscribe to our Patreon at the dog water
Level.
At the dog water level, and well, you know, the noobs also, they get some too spicy for YouTube content type stuff. But the thing is, you and I have some really, really foul jokes that we use against each other on a near daily basis, right?
Absolutely.
Now, would you agree that some of our viewers would find it funny if we told some of those jokes on the channel?
Oh, 100%, yeah.
But we understand that we have a responsibility, even though we have the First Amendment right to say what we want to say, that we have to have some level of responsibility to know that when we make certain jokes that it could, for a reasonable person, it could lead them to believe that something really bad is actually happening, or there's a real type of disrespect that's there.
Yeah.
We understand that we have a responsibility to make sure that when we cross the line, that it's not public.
Yeah. I mean,
right?
Yeah. I mean, that's...
Right? Like, I mean, we understand that as content creators. And this Hasan guy is a content creator of sorts. And I think that it's one of those things that you learn as a child that your parent instills in you. And both of your parents instill in you if you're not black.
Yo, I just got that. Yo, that took me a second. That's fucked up. You know what though? You're not the only one. All my friends were fucking divorced. Continue.
Right. I just, you know, just to drive the point home, just because your parents teach you, or your parent teaches you if you're black, your parent teaches you if you're, I'm sorry. Just because you can doesn't mean you absolutely should, and you should use discretion when you go to either say something or do something. Because again, I don't think anybody called, especially not you. I don't think anybody called for Hasan to be canceled. No. But we are going to criticize the words that come out of his mouth the same way that comedy fans have been doing since the beginning of time. You know how they used to do it? Boo!
Yeah. I think my last kind of story, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, point that I'll make about this is for me with Hasan. He might be a swell guy, might be a great individual, but when you're profiting off of other people's pain, and you're profiting off of division, and you're stoking the flames of something that's really nasty in society, are you truly being that, I would say, positive force that you imagine yourself to be? or you just creating more division yourself. Because when fake stories are out about people, they're going to be questioning everything. And let's just call it what it is. Now you're going to have more white people. I'm not saying me, because frankly, right, I didn't agree with what he did, but he's got that First Amendment right to say whatever the fuck he wants to do. If he wants to Jussie Smollett his whole life, go ahead.
That was the guy that came to mind.
I don't fucking care. But at the same point, when you cause more division and you have more white people, I would say, actually anybody really just hate another race due to something, and I'm not agreeing with that line of thought. I don't know. It's just kind of grimy to me. I guess for me, ethically, make jokes, make it funny, but when you're just profiting off of all this division and you're capitalizing it, I don't know. It just makes me feel weird. It's like,
Yeah. Yep. Sorry, Hasan. But again, we're not saying that you should not be able to get on stage or make your skits. Just know that you're not entitled to this reaction, right?
Yeah.
There are going to be some times where they're just going to be like,
and listen, if you want to make a true difference and you want to support a black-run business, make sure to subscribe to the Talkin' Shit podcast. We here are run by a black owner, and we are looking to further along minorities and racial relations. With one more like, with one more comment, you'll be able to create better equality in America, joining whites and blacks together in unity. I am Captain Paul. We bring a lot of cold truths
and lukewarm takes.
Stupid. See you in the next one.
Oh my God.